Our story begins with a quiet and forgotten man named Frank Vega. Once a proud and resilient soldier, Frank is now just a shadow wandering through life. An aging Vietnam War veteran, Frank served his country honorably for nearly a decade. He faced the jungles, the gunfire, and the horrors of war with courage. But when he finally came home, he returned to a different kind of battlefield, one filled with silence, neglect, and broken dreams. Frank hoped that coming back to civilian life would mean new beginnings. He dreamed of reuniting with his high school sweetheart, the love who had once promised to wait for him. But reality hit hard. She had moved on, married someone else, and started a family. The life Frank had imagined was gone. The world he fought for had no place for him. With a broken heart and no prospects, Frank applied to the police force, hoping that his years of service would open a door. But once again, life wasn't fair. He was told he was too old, too angry, too damaged, just not what they were looking for. And so, Frank drifted through life, unseen and unwanted. Eventually, he scraped together enough money to buy a hot dog cart. Day after day, he stood on street corners, grilling sausages and smiling politely at strangers. It wasn't much, but it was honest work. He endured long hours, bad weather, and the quiet pain of loneliness. Then, even that simple life was taken from him. A flashy new food truck set up shop across the street, complete with social media ads, gourmet toppings, and a sleek design. His customers vanished overnight. His last source of dignity disappeared. Alone and forgotten once more, Frank wandered through life. But fate had something different in store for him. One day, as he rode the city bus home, Frank found himself in the middle of a tense situation. Two aggressive young punks were harassing an elderly man, shoving him, mocking him, daring anyone to speak up. The rest of the passengers averted their eyes, pretending not to see. But not Frank. In a flash, Frank stood up. The soldier within him, long dormant, awakened. With the reflexes of a man half his age and the power of a war-hardened fighter, Frank sprang into action. A few swift blows later, the two punks were unconscious on the bus floor. The passengers were stunned, not just by his bravery, but by his skill. Someone had recorded the entire incident on their phone. The video hit the internet that night. It spread like wildfire. The next morning, Frank Vega was a household name. Social media dubbed him badass. He became a symbol of justice, an old-school hero in a modern world. News anchors praised his courage. His face appeared on t-shirts, murals, and talk shows. He was invited to interviews, featured in viral videos, and celebrated by millions. For the first time in decades, Frank felt seen. But the applause didn't last. 3 months after his rise to fame, tragedy struck. Frank's elderly mother passed away, leaving behind her modest house and her beloved dog. Grieving and lonely, Frank reached out to one of the few people who truly knew him, his old war buddy, Klondike, Washington. The two had shared foxholes and gunfire, and now they shared a home again. Klondike, always a bit mysterious, arrived carrying a secret. One evening, he handed Frank a flash drive and told him it was linked to a safety deposit box. "We'll talk tomorrow," Klondike said. But that conversation never happened. That night, Klondike walked to the corner store for a pack of cigarettes. He never came back. Two men confronted him outside, Terrence and Sebastian, cold and dangerous. They demanded the flash drive. Klondike refused to give it up. Words escalated to gunfire. Moments later, Klondike was dead in the alley. Frank's world shattered. He begged the police to investigate. He told them about the flash drive. He gave them names. But no one seemed to care. Klondike was just another statistic to them, a black man killed in a bad neighborhood. They didn't see the soldier, the hero, the brother in arms. They saw a file to close. Frank couldn't accept that. So, he did what the police wouldn't. He started his own investigation. His first stop, the alley where Klondike had died. There, beneath flickering streetlights and faded graffiti, Frank found the first clue, bullet casings and a silver locket with a woman's photo inside. He took it to a nearby pawn shop, hoping for answers. The old owner took one look and nodded grimly. "That locket? It belongs to a guy named Terrence. Felon. Bad news." Frank had his first lead. He tracked down Terrence's wife, a woman worn down by years of pain and silence. She hesitated at first but eventually opened up. She told Frank that Terrence used to play basketball every weekend at a nearby park. She hadn't seen him lately, said he'd been acting nervous, paranoid, like he was being watched. Frank thanked her and walked away, his fists clenched and his mind sharp. He didn't know what was on that flash drive, or why it had gotten his best friend killed, but he would find out. And when he did, justice would come. Not in the form of a courtroom verdict or a cop's report. But from badass himself. Because Frank Vega might be old, and he might be broken. But he's not done fighting yet. Frank heads to the park and questions the players, but they mock and threaten him. Bad move. Frank unleashes a flurry of fists and takes them all down. One of them finally gives him a new lead. Terrence might be connected to a guy named Ronaldo. Frank hunts down Ronaldo at a seedy bar, but once again, he's met with hostility. Frank has no patience for games and fights his way to the truth. Ronaldo tells him that Terrence is dating a woman named Tanya. Meanwhile, we're introduced to Panther, a ruthless crime boss and the one truly pulling the strings. He's working closely with the city's corrupt mayor, Mayor Williams. Turns out, the flash drive Klondike stole contains damning evidence of the mayor's illegal dealings, bribes, real estate scams, and plans to drill oil in poor neighborhoods. Klondike had once worked for Panther but betrayed him by stealing the drive. Now Panther is desperate to get it back before the truth is exposed. Back to Frank. With help from his curious young neighbor, Martin, Frank begins digging deeper into what's on the drive. He pays a visit to Tanya at her massage parlor, trying to find Terrence, but she's not giving anything away. So Frank follows her home and ambushes Terrence in her kitchen. Using some old-school persuasion, Frank gets Terrence to spill the truth. Panther ordered Klondike's hit because of the flash drive. Frank finally knows who's behind everything. But before confronting Panther, Frank makes a stop at Martin's apartment, where he saves Martin's mom from her abusive ex. Frank becomes their protector, fixing their door and letting them stay with him for safety. Amber even invites Frank for lunch, and there's a hint of romance between them until Martin hilariously interrupts their kiss. The next day, Frank hands the flash drive over to Officer Malarkey, the only cop he still trusts. Then he goes after Panther directly, but Panther's waiting for him. Frank walks straight into a trap, gets captured, and is tortured with electric shocks. Still, Frank refuses to talk. Frustrated, Panther takes Frank's wallet and heads to his house, thinking the drive might be there. What Panther doesn't know is that Frank is always prepared. He breaks free, sets off a fiery explosion using oil drums, and escapes. Payback was due. Panther, desperate, hijacked a bus, but Frank, in another, was hot on his heels. What unfolded was a maelstrom of metal and mayhem as the two behemoths tore through traffic, smashing cars and leaving a trail of chaos. Eventually, both vehicles crashed, their destructive race concluded. Panther fled on foot, Frank in relentless pursuit. Along the way, he encountered the same punks from the original bus incident. They tried to ambush him again, hoping to film their assault for online notoriety, but Frank swiftly and decisively ended their foolish endeavor. Panther finally reached Frank's house, cornering Amber and threatening her. Just then, Frank burst through the door, tackling his adversary. Their brutal brawl raged through the living room and out onto the front yard, where Amber bravely intervened, turning the tide in Frank's favor. Police sirens wailed in the distance, arriving to arrest Panther. Even better, the evidence from the flash drive went public, exposing Mayor Williams's vast criminal enterprise. He was arrested, and justice, long overdue, was finally served. In the end, Frank, Amber, and Martin began a peaceful new life together. The neighborhood was safer, corruption had been rooted out, and Frank Vega, badass, had proven that it's never too late to fight for what's right. And this is where the movie ends. Thanks for watching this video.